Hi, I'm Ron and welcome to PopScicle, where I talk about popular culture, science, and everything in between. This episode will be a continuation of the series of episodes that I have devoted to BL series, and this one is about the top 10 actors in BL series. Now, I love movies. Anyone who has been watching my series of videos on this channel would know that. And one of the things that I love the most about movies and about TV shows even is the acting. I believe that a not very good movie can be saved by exceptional acting, and sometimes the only reason I have for watching a particular movie or a series is because I love the actor. A really gifted actor can elevate a material so much, and I just love actors. My favorite actors are Kate Blanchett, Leonardo DiCaprio, Meryl Streep, Nicole Kidman, who are some of the greats of cinema, modern cinema, I should say. I just really love actors and the craft of acting. I'd be acting if I could. I love how they immerse themselves into the character. They get lost in the character and become the character, take ownership of it, transform themselves. And there are some actors that are known for being very transformational, like, for example, Meryl Streep and Tilda Swinton, of course, and Charlize Theron. But even without those physical transformations, just the gestures and the eyes, the expression in the eyes and minimal gestures, the subtle tics in the facial expressions, those are things that I live and die for when watching a movie. And those are the things that give me goosebumps when I watch something with excellent acting. And so, when watching BL series, it's also one of my criteria for liking a series. In fact, and in a later episode, I'll be talking about my tiers of BL series, and one of the determinants of the tier, one of the criteria for grading is the acting. How well the actors express their emotions, deliver their lines, and even their chemistry with each other. But for this particular list, I'm just going to focus on individual performances of the actors in the series. And this is my humble opinion of the 10 actors who I believe gave the most rounded, defined, relatable, and just most excellent acting out of all the BL series that I watched. Of course, I'm sure that you have your own opinions on who are the best actors in BL series, so please feel free to share them in the comments below. So let's start off my top 10 actors in BL series, and at number 10 we have PAWAT in He's Coming to Me. So PAWAT is one of the veterans of the BL series industry, and he's also been in BL movies like in Do, which he won a Critics Award for. And so critics and viewers have taken notice of how good an actor he is. He's a pretty solid actor, and I believe that he showed this really well in the great BL series He's Coming to Me. A short one, but very, very heartfelt and quite unique in terms of its plot. Now, going into the acting, he very much carried the entire series, along with SINGTO, of course, who's a very, very capable actor as well. And he was able to convey all of those emotions of innocence and hurt, and two of the critical scenes where he really displayed his craft are when he confessed to his mother about his sexuality, and also, of course, the infamous rooftop scene, which won an award for best drama scene. And he handled both of those deftly, with just the right amount of subtlety in the performance. I mean, it was a full-on cry fest, both scenes. They were full-on cry fests, but at the same time, some other actors would have gone overboard with the emotion, thus making it a bit too artificial. There was no hint of artifice in the performance of especially in the scene where he confessed to his mother. You can really feel the pain that he was feeling, keeping all that to himself and being confused about who he really was. So, yeah, I believe that really pulled this off, and I'm excited to see more series with him in it and where he could showcase his acting prowess. At number 9 is Ian Pangilinan from Gaya sa Pelikula or Like in the Movies. So Gaya sa Pelikula is led by two actors, Ian Pangilinan and Paolo Pangilinan. Between the two of them, it's Ian Pangilinan who has had much more experience in acting. He has been in theater since high school, I believe. And then his experience was honed in college theater in the Ateneo de Manila University, which is also my alma mater. And this is his first big break in mainstream media. And I'm glad to see that he was able to really not only show how experienced he is in acting, but also to lift Paolo Pangilinan, his co-actor, in those scenes that they shared together. Paolo himself has said in interviews that he was made better because of his interactions with Ian. And Ian was always on point. He was subtle. He was very simple and sparse and economical. I guess that's the best word for it. Economical in acting. Even in those scenes where other actors would have gone overly dramatic, he was a bit subdued. And he delivered his lines really very well and realistically. Some people would probably say in the Philippines that they don't know a lot of people who speak like that, but I do. And well, a lot of people who I usually interact with in my circles are used to people talking like that in the Philippines, talking straight in English. And well, he has a bit of a twang, which not everyone has, even those who speak English really well. But it's not artificial, it's not fake. And his emotions definitely are not. You can really feel it. I think a big part of why Ian did so well, of course, even if he is the more seasoned actor, is that he played off Paolo so well and they had excellent chemistry. That's one of the things that they really had going for them. But I'm glad to see a theater actor like Ian being able to flex his acting chops in mainstream media like this, and I can't wait to see him in more in the future. At number 8, we have true BL royalty, SINGTO PRACHAYA, and again, he's coming to me. SINGTO is probably my favorite Thai BL actor. He's, ever since seeing him in SANTOS, and then in SANTOS S, and then eventually in He's Coming to Me, he was consistently doing minimal acting. He never went the route of many other BL actors, or actors in general, where they would overplay dramatic scenes and overly cry. But and most of the time, he'd just be silent and brooding, and when he is showing emotion, it's more of the quiverings of his face instead of an outright sobbing. But when he does sob, it's really very effective. It's not a BL series, but I've also watched I'm T, Me Too, in which he's with 5 other BL superstars from GMM TV, and those scenes where he does end up breaking down, but not to the extent of overly sobbing. Again, there's that control he always has. It showed me, it reminded me of how excellent he was in SANTOS and SANTOS S, but much more so in He's Coming to Me. There were critical scenes, like of course the dramatic sequences at the end. I won't go into spoiler territory, but there's so much in the last 2 episodes where he was able to show his dramatic skills. But even in those scenes where he was just light and having fun, that was quite refreshing. It was a very different character from what he had in SANTOS and SANTOS S, which really showed his range. And again, he has very few peers in terms of that ability to control his emotions and make it seem so realistic, make it look so realistic, that he's just like any other guy who doesn't want people to see him crying, and so he's stopping himself from openly sobbing. And I think he's so good at that, and he's so mature in terms of his acting. So his coming to me is a twofer, and it's handled really well by the two lead actors who played off each other very well. At number 7, we have Fandy Fan from History to Boundary Crossing. So this one is the Taiwanese BL series from the History franchise. This is the first ever BL series that I watched, and I still love it. It's still in my top 5. And I was blown away by the performance of Fandy Fan. He was cocky, he was funny, he was sweet, he was awkward, he was angry, and ultimately he was in love. And he displayed all of these emotions so well. He was so strong in scenes where he broke down in tears. That scene right after he confessed at the volleyball net and was rejected. That was awesome. And then of course that scene, and this is the best one, that scene where he confessed again in front of the sister who was professing her love for him, and he was saying, if you're a volleyball captain, if you're willing to help me all the time, then I'd fall in love with you. And obviously was speaking about her brother. That was a very emotionally charged scene, and Fandy Fan handled it so well. So yeah, even if that's the first BL I watched, and that was way back in March, many months ago, I can still remember how impressed I was, the goosebumps that I got from his acting. And so it's an easy pick for me to put him here in my top 10 and up so high in the rankings. So that's Fandy Fan from Boundary Crossing of History 2, one of the best BL series out there. At number 6, we have KOKOY de Santos from Gameboys. Between the two of them, I would say that KOKOY was the one who was consistently excellent from the very beginning. I mean, yes, of course, Elijah is always excellent, but in terms of really owning the character and making the character so alive and so his own, I think it's by virtue also of the character itself. Gavril is a much more expressive character, so definitely he'd pop out more than the more reserved and walled-in Cairo. But KOKOY carried that really well from the very start. And yes, at the start he was cringy, but that's part of the character, and he was so effective in it. That's why he made a lot of people, including myself, who's a big Gameboys fan, cringe. But watch those quiet scenes where he would show the subtle emotions. He was never like Elijah, who had several scenes where he really broke down. Gavril, or I mean KOKOY de Santos, had more quiet moments where he would have a trembling in the voice and in the eyes, and tears would be falling down his eyes, but he wouldn't really be sobbing. And there were a lot of scenes like that. In that scene, for example, where he first quote-unquote broke it off from Cairo when Cairo accused him of lying about his grandmother. That was powerful. And then that other scene where he was appreciating Cairo being concerned about him, and he had to walk out of the scene because he didn't want to show Cairo that he was crying. And then finally, I think his best ever scene was in that bench scene before their final reconciliation. This was their final fight when they thought they would be able to make it up, but then they just threw accusations at each other. And I love where KOKOY said as Gavril, "It's always me who takes care of you. Can't you just take care of me even just this once? Can't you bend over and lighten up and take care of me for once?" And you can really feel it coming from him. You can feel the sincerity, and you can feel the hurt. And that's really when it was solidified to me how consistently excellent an actor KOKOY de Santos is. And I'm glad that he's getting attention, but I wish he were getting more attention because he deserves just as much attention as Elijah for their performances in Gameboys. Now we go to our top 5 actors in BL series. Again, these are my opinions on the 5 who are able to really carry their character and build their character really well, show the emotions excellently. At number 5, we have KRIT from I Told Sunset About You. So I Told Sunset About You just ended a few weeks ago. And yeah, it's now my favorite BL series. It's probably, no, not probably, it's definitely the best Thai BL series ever in terms of every single aspect. And you need only look at the documentaries to see how much passion and dedication was poured into it by everyone involved, especially the director and the 2 lead actors. So PP, I had not known about before watching the series. Yes, he was in My Ambulance and several other series along with BILLKIN. But this was the first time that I ever watched him, and I was impressed. Really impressed. He was not as showy as BILLKIN, definitely. Everyone would agree with that. He was more of the silent crier, except for that scene where he broke down in front of his parents when he asked them, "Are you proud of me?" But he was so good in the subtle facial expressions of hurt and longing and staring. When he stares at BILLKIN or at Bass, for that matter, with so much longing and emotion, it really gets you. So he's the type of actor who knows that he doesn't have to go overboard in the acting. He can play it quiet and he can be equally effective. You know, those scenes with him and BILLKIN sharing furtive glances and touches, those were moments to be treasured in the series, and I believe PP pulled it off really well. He has this pale complexion and an innocent face that makes you really feel for him whenever he's in pain, especially, and he was in pain a lot in this series, emotional pain. But you would also see registering in his eyes the joy when he is joyful, and so you can't help but celebrate the things that he celebrates, and you can't help but root for him also. And that's the mark of a great actor. He didn't have to do too much, and those scenes where he did have to show a lot more emotion than he used to are very effective. 2 of the most, I guess, the critical scenes are, number 1, well, aside from what I mentioned, him asking his parents if they were proud of him. One scene is where he wore the bra. That was a powerful scene because there he was showing his frustration at not being the type that Te would love. And the second one was in that scene where he was in that restaurant or that cafe, and the theme was being played on the piano, and he was holding hands with Bass, and you can see just with his facial expressions and the limping of his hand in Bass's hand, that was the turning point where the audience realizes, oh, sorry Bass, but it's still going to be Owen Tay as the end game. And we can't help but feel for all of them, but definitely that scene was carried so well by PP. At number 4, we have the other actor from I Told Sunset About You. We have BILLKIN PUTTHIPONG. Ever since watching I Told Sunset About You, I've been watching so many videos with BILLKIN in it, music videos. I am floored by his voice and his charisma. He's so charismatic. It's not just the dimples, it's the aura. He's so in control of himself. He knows himself so well. And those scenes where he's the ugliest crier that I know in all of BL, and I mean that as a compliment. You know, to be honest, in the first 3 episodes when he was crying, I felt I wasn't sure if I liked it because there was too much of it, and I wasn't really used to that much crying. especially at the end of episode 3, I believe. No, at the end of episode 4, when he gave up his his confirmation, his slot in the school to O, and O basically threw it back in his face. I wasn't quite sure I liked it, but when I rewatched it, and then when I watched episode 5 again, and I realized that's really genuine crying from the bottom of the heart, and it's ugly crying because there's so much snot going around. Especially if you watch the documentaries, you'll see really a line of snot falling from his nose. That's a mark of an actor who doesn't care what he looks like, how he sounds like, because it's gut and heart wrenching how BILLKIN cries, coming from deep in here, and the guttural howls, okay, which you don't usually hear and see in BL, probably because a lot of BL actors are too concerned about what they look like, whether they'll still look pretty. But BILLKIN is taking a page out of the Viola Davis school of acting, where the more snot, the better. And I really appreciate that, because it's ugly crying at its very best, and it's very effective. To be honest, part of the reason why I like the acting of BILLKIN so much is because I've watched the documentaries, the behind the scenes of the episodes in ITSE, and I've seen how much dedication he has into going into every scene. But I would like to believe that even without watching the documentaries, I would still be overall impressed, especially after rewatching certain episodes, with BILLKIN's extremely heartfelt and raw and unapologetically unpretty acting. Even in the non-crying scenes, he was very effective in showing his annoyance, his sarcasm, his frustration. That scene in the classroom when Bass was confessing to O, and the camera just focused on his face, looking back and forth from Bass to O and back, and he was struggling to stop himself from crying, not completely succeeding, I should say. That was excellent. And if you watch the documentary, you'd see that at a certain point in between takes, PP came over to BILLKIN to help him, either to help calm him or to help him with the emotions further, and I love that. I love the chemistry between them, even off camera. But anyway, that scene was, I think, one of the best ones that BILLKIN played, along with the ugly crying in practically all the episodes. Now we're in our top 3, and coming in at number 3 is ATTHAPHAN from Theory of Love. So everyone knows how great an actor Gun is. He has won several awards even outside the BL industry. He won a Best Supporting Actor award for his performance in The Gifted. And the special episode of Theory of Love that came out a few weeks ago, that scene, of course this is outside of my citation of him in Theory of Love. I'm just saying that scene where in the ending sequence, Kai gave him a ring. Other actors would have oversold it by overly crying and sobbing and saying a lot of things like "I love you," "thank you," etc. Of course, we have to give credit to the writer and to the director for making it such a quiet scene, but I was blown away by the simplicity and the subtlety of Gun's acting here, where again, instead of overselling it, he just had a few quivers in the face, sniffles, tear down his eye, and then just a nod of his head, I believe, and he didn't even say anything. And that's the mark of a brilliant actor. I won't always use the word brilliant for actors, but I am using it for Gun. And of course, going back to the main Theory of Love series, he was able to show a person who was clinging on to an idea of love, and desperately clinging on to a positive view of someone he was in love with, even if he knew that that guy was a jerk for most of the series. And through the parts that he was not giving in, even if of course we all knew that he wanted to give in, but he was sticking to his principles. He wanted Kai to realize first what true love really is. And those scenes where he showed defiance, and ultimately those scenes where he really, brought his emotions to Kai across. Those were all excellent moments. There was no false note at any moment from Gunn, and I think we could say that he's one of the top 2, top 3 best actors in the Thai BL industry, maybe even outside of it, of his age. He's so good. He's so unbelievably good in Theory of Love, and I think in everything he does. At number 2, we have Elijah Canlas from Gameboys. So some of you might be saying, "Oh, too much Gameboys, you're biased." Well, it's a personal ranking, it's a personal preference. Gameboys is one of my top 3 BL series of all time. But I don't think, even if you don't really like Gameboys, but if you've watched through it, I don't think you can deny the excellence of Elijah Canlas' acting. Outside of the BL industry, he has been winning so many citations. He won the Gawad Urian, which in the Philippines is, at least in terms of prestige, sort of the equivalent of the Oscars. He's the second youngest winner in the Best Actor category. He won an international award, the Asian Film Festival Award for Best Actor, also for Kalel 15. And come on, just going through those episodes in Gameboys, that scene where he found out that his father had died, goosebumps. That scene where he broke down when he was crying right after that phone call from his mom, that was an acting masterclass. And then that scene where he was fighting with Gavril over the phone, that was another round of excellent acting. And then all of those discussions that they had, that bench scene where they were throwing accusations at each other, it's painful when you see Cairo being so abrasive when he says things like, "Okay, let's talk about it," in that tone, right? When he could have said it much more gently to appease Gavril. But then you see, that's really what Cairo is. Cairo has always had walls up. He's always been suppressing his emotions. And that's why in episodes 1 and probably all the way to episode 3, he was very guarded in terms of his emotions. Unlike Gavril, who was always expressive. And so it's such a beauty to finally see Cairo relaxing in the presence of Gav. Those were beautiful moments when he finally did that. A bonus scene where Elijah really showed his acting chops was the scene in the car when he was drunk, talking to his mom. That was brilliant. The way he handled that drunken scene. I've seen people drunk who talk like that, and he was slurred, but he was sad, but at the same time his mind was out there. He wasn't really quite there because he was drunk, and the way he would laugh ironically during that scene, and the way his repartee with his mom, when he said, "Oh, I don't want to go back there. You might pull my hair. You might scold me." And he was so cute and adorable, but sad at the same time, and you can't help but have your heart wrenched out for this guy who we've been following since episode 1. His growth, his character development is one of the best, if not the best, in BL series. We've followed his trajectory, and a lesser actor would not have been able to handle it as well. Hands down, Elijah Canlas is the best Filipino actor of his generation, and we are so blessed to have had him in a BL series, especially in a BL series as great as Gameboys and as revolutionary as Gameboys. So I can't wait to see what he does in season 2 and in the movie. In the meantime, he has so many other things lined up, like movies and TV series, and we're all the more blessed for having such a great actor to behold and to enjoy. It's hard to top number 2, right? With all of that said, however, there is someone who takes the cake and takes the number 1 spot for me, and that is FLUKE NATOUCH from Until We Meet Again. So, FLUKE, what can I say? He's another one like Gun who has consistently impressed everyone in everything that he does. Movies, TV series. Here, you can't discuss the acting of FLUKE as Farm without talking about those most dramatic scenes when he would break down from the memories. That's one. Well, those are several scenes. Number 2, those scenes that he shared with Dean's grandmother. Whoa, wrenching, right? And of course, finally, you have that final confrontation sequence where In Touch was speaking through Farm, and they found forgiveness and resolution. In forgave Korn, Farm forgave Dean, and it was a painful scene. But FLUKE was so effective in it. He was the character. He was 2 characters at once. Even you can say that, right? And you know those cute moments when he would say "Pidin." Everyone knows that. Those quiet moments and those scenes when he would just break out into a smile. He's adorable. He's an adorable actor who will just shock you all of a sudden when he shows the range of his emotional acuity, his maturity, how he handles such heavy dramatic moments. You almost fear that he's going to go unconscious from losing his breath from crying so much. Sometimes the crying in BL series and in other series could go overboard, and you'd go like, oh no, too much crying, stop it. But I don't think it was ever the case with FLUKE, because he handled them so carefully and with so much respect for the material. And it really made sense in the context of the plot, after all. Some of the most dramatic sequences came at the end of the series when he was doubting as to how much of his love for Dean was due to destiny, meaning it was forced upon them, and how much of it was coming from his own personal feelings. And even though the focus went off him for quite a bit in those sequences, though when he was there, you could really feel that he was struggling with it and he was trying to overcome it. And so finally, when he did, and he and Dean came together, it was blissful, and it was the ending that we all hoped for, because we had all been rooting for Farm from the very beginning. He's this innocent boy who's been trapped in his destiny against his will, but he managed a way to find love in the process, and we're all cheering for him because he did it so well. Great job, FLUKE, and we're excited to see more, because you are one of the best, if not the best, BL actors out there. So those are my top 10 BL series actors. Of course, I haven't watched all BL series, so there are probably some out there that you'd like to recommend that I watch, so that I can see the acting, and maybe I can revisit this list sometime in the future after having watched more BL series. I'm hoping that I will encounter more great acting, because like I said, That's one of the things that I always look forward to when watching movies and series. Now, if you liked that episode and would like to see more, not only about BL series, but also essentially everything about popular culture, science, and everything in between, don't forget to subscribe to PopScicle so that you may be alerted to new content. See you again soon!